streaming stored video. This is among the most used video streaming services in the world right now. So there's live video, there's also interactive video. Those are actually harder to do. We're not going to talk about those services. If you're curious, please feel free to dig into Chapter 7 in textbook. But as an introduction in Chapter 2, we just talk about this one here, the stored video. This is also the video on-demand service that Polly mentioned slightly earlier. The service model, hey, surprise, surprise, client-server based. So the server being where the videos are stored, okay, and the client is the consumer of the video. Okay, quite straightforward. And streaming is just to pull the video frames one by one across time. And the first protocol that I'll be introducing is called the DASH, Dynamic Adaptive Streaming over HTTP. So from here, you see that this is what video streaming over HTTP and over, therefore, TCP. So unlike what we have expected probably, right? Video services does have high bandwidth requirement and short delay requirement. But TCP, how would it serve? Okay, well, for video streaming services. Well, the main reason will be explained the next topic called CDN. Here, what we are addressing is this. Between the client and the server, there's the internet. Okay, internet fluctuates a lot if you think about it, right? People come and go, sending other video traffic, sending other big file download traffic. Now these is gonna, interact with each other, and therefore the available bandwidth really between the client and the server is varying a lot over time. So Dash here is to try to adapt, okay, to the internet conditions. That is very dynamic. All right. So the main intelligence is actually at the client side. Okay. What server did is just to prepare such that the client can be intelligent about, okay, about streaming video over the internet. So what the server is preparing is doing this. Video files are usually large, and it's usually many frames being played or being transmitted over time. And so what the server did first is to divide the video files into shorter segments. Okay. So here in the slide, we call it chunks, video chunks. A little bit like in P2P, BitTorrent actually cut big files into chunks. And each chunk is stored and encoded in different rates. If you recall when we were talking about videos, right? Depending on how much detail you want to keep in the video, depending on the quality of the video you want to be able to play back. You might want to encode it at different rates. Okay? Higher rate usually meant that more detail, better quality. Lower rate usually meant less detail, lower quality. But the trade-off is, hey, for high quality video, you do need a bit more network bandwidth to transmit. But for lower rate video streams, there's less need of bandwidth. Okay, chances higher that you don't run into trouble sending a low-rate video stream over the internet, right? So, well, to allow these, flexibility, okay, depending on how the client senses what the current network bandwidth is, the server is actually storing each chunk and encoding multiple versions of these chunks at different rates. So when the quality, when the network bandwidth is good, then we could download a higher quality video, a higher rate video. When the network bandwidth is not sufficient, we'll have to drop to a lower rate, okay, version of a chunk. Now, what's being communicated to the client from the server is this, the manifest file, which is providing the location, the address of all these different chunks at different rates. All right. Now, the client. What the client does is periodically measure the client to server or server to client bandwidth. Okay, so what it means here is exactly the available bandwidth. And then, provided this bandwidth limit, consult with the manifest file and then request the chunk, okay, the client is looking for at the time, and chooses the maximum rate such that it's under the bandwidth limit. Okay, so measure periodically the available bandwidth, pick the version of the chunk such that the rate is right below the limit. Okay. And at different point in time, so periodically, the client does the measurement of the available bandwidth. If it gets back up again, then you pick a rate that's a little bit better. Okay. Otherwise, if the available bandwidth drops, pick the rate that is a little bit lower. Right? So you choose different coding rate depending on what the available bandwidth is at the given point in time. Right? So you heard that the client is actually pretty busy. It's measuring the available bandwidth and deciding what is the best rate of the chunk to download. So bandwidth, higher rate, or lower rate. So this is one of the intelligence the Dash client exercises. There are actually two more intelligences that are implemented in the client. The second one is this: where to request the chunk. And the third, when to request the chunk. Let's talk about each of these a bit further next. Where to request the chunk. What happened there is that in the manifest, there could be multiple URLs indicating that there are multiple servers carrying that particular chunk at that particular rate the client is looking for. Now, among many of these physical servers offering the same chunk, same rate, the client needs to pick one of these. Okay, so the typical decision is to pick the server that is the closest to the client. By closest, usually people mean the server that is showing the smallest delay back to the client. Now, how do you get the delay from the client to the server and back? Well, the client can send a short ping message, okay, and see how long does it take for the server to answer back, or to send trace route, for example. So clients are also, in the meantime, sending these probes to find out which of these servers will be closer to the client. And this is also done periodically, just like how the network bandwidth is measured.